Hi, and welcome back to the committee program. I am your host, Arun Chaudhary, and this is Smart Club. Today, we are going to talk about Kosovo, specifically the Corona Coup, and how the young nation has dealt with the virus. It's a place we've talked about in different contexts before, but we're really going to drill in deep today. Although America and Kosovo are close allies and the U.S. played a pivotal role in Kosovar independence from Serbia, many in the U.S. will not be familiar with the current politics of Kosovo and frankly were a bit baffled by the unsteady press conference in which Richard Grenell, Donald Trump's main man in Middle Europe, declared a breakthrough peace treaty between Serbia and Kosovo. And then somehow a lake was named after Donald Trump. It really was all a mess that Zizek called the Corona Coup. And of course, how Europe's youngest nation has dealt with a pandemic has been a core column of the story. With us to discuss COVID, the Corona Coup, and Kosovo are Orgesa Arifi, former committee employee, and I should say, but currently she is working communications at the Health Ministry of Kosovo, and Arber Zaimi, who is an activist, campaigner, and a communicator for the Vetvendosa movement. I should say that all three of us have worked together very closely on Vetvendosa campaigns, and so we're definitely coming at this with a point of view, which I think is clear, and yet we will still be extremely informative and helpful. Okay. So, Arber, if I can start with you, and if I can ask you to set the stage for folks, the party that you and I both support came to power in an election we both worked in. What was the opening in Kosovo politics that made Vetvendosa appealing enough to win a vote? You know, this was a huge expansion for them from being a leftist, progressive kind of movement into actually being part of the coalition for power. You can even take us through the last sort of decade as quickly as you can.
Hello, Arun, and thank you for this invitation in your show. And hello, Orgesa, too. It's nice to see you. And I will shortly go back through some years because Kosovo has a tragic history which is very recent, actually. Your public, your viewers, they probably come from the States and they don't know much about Kosovo. Kosovo is one of the countries of the world with the most Philo-American tendency in the population, in the public opinion, and people need to know why. Everybody knows that the US led the coalition of countries and the NATO into the liberation of Kosovo in the war of '99. But what was going on back then? Very shortly, I will tell that some numbers about that conflict. So there was a general offensive by Serbia which colonized Kosovo for, let's say, 90 years or something. And in this general offensive in the years 98 and 99, there were more than 1 million people from Kosovo, Albanians from Kosovo, which were expulsed from their country. So basically there was ethnic cleansing. And there is a documented sexual assault of over 20,000 women from military, police, and paramilitary troops from Serbia. And there was the burning of over 130,000 homes of Albanian families, the killing of more than 12,000 civilians, and the disappearance of many people, of which almost 1,600 are still missing. So in the year '99, as I said, a coalition of countries led by the states intervened to free Kosovo. And then this is the main reason why everybody here is so much pro-American. And it's our own main ally in the world politics. Of course we know that Kosovo is a very tiny country and a little country, but still we see America, which is the most powerful country of the world, let's say, we see it as our best friend. They helped us survive. They helped us stop an actual ethnic cleansing policy that was going on. When it comes to the economic situation, I will just give some brief numbers for people to understand what's the situation in Kosovo, because when we speak about the Balkans, it's a region full of economic hardship, and we all know about the global crisis of the economy that started in 2008 is not going back. But still, Kosovo is one of the most underdeveloped places in the Balkans, one of the most underdeveloped countries in Europe. So the medium wage in Kosovo is about $350, but the unemployment is really high. We are talking about an unemployment which is higher in real numbers, higher than 45%. Women unemployment, real unemployment, is higher than 80%, and youth unemployment is higher than 65%. So basically, this is the situation where our movement started to work. The movement was founded in 2005 from around 70 activists coming from different backgrounds. Some of them were environmental activists or climate activists, as someone would call them today. Some of them were working rights activists. Some of them were anti-colonial or decolonial activists and so on. So they came together to start Vetvendos in 2005. Back then, we were a movement, a non-governmental movement, which was mainly protesting in the streets. We were not even thinking on going into parliamentary politics. We started the first step in that direction in 2010. This is the first time that Vetvendosia participated as a movement in the parliamentary elections. And I remember I was back then working for Vetvendosia. I still am. I am a member of the presidency. So in 2010, we got around 12% of the vote. And that's our start. In 2021, which is 11 years later, we won a decisive victory of more than 50% of the voters' support. Of course, it's 11 years full of troubles for the movement and a lot of funny moments too, but there were also a lot of risks that we ran. We had to fight with local corrupted politicians, but sometimes we also had to struggle against international politicians who were also corrupt or willing to work with local corrupt politicians. And in 2019 was our first victory. Arun, you were part of that electoral campaign, so we worked together there. In 2019, we received almost 30% of the vote. We were the biggest parliamentarian party in Kosovo. It was very difficult for us to form a movement. We had to join forces with LDK, which is a center-rightist party. But we managed to keep our program, which is, I don't know if people see, probably they don't. In my background, the three words is equality, justice, and development. So we are a social democratic party, and we are working for these three goals to start happening in Kosovo. Now we have our government. We didn't need to go into an alliance mode in the elections of this year, but that happened only after we managed to navigate through a crisis in 2020. We will probably talk about that later when we go into the details of the Trump government intervention in Kosovo.
Yeah, which we will get to. But so Orgesa, there's this kind of big generational changeover in government, and even with a coalition with the center right, it's kind of this changing of the guard, right, from the traditional Kosovo parties to something new and social democratic and progressive looking at the same time. In the other corner, we see a pandemic just beginning to enter into people's consciousness. Even as this coalition is forming, it's just sort of starting in Milan and Bergamo, and it hasn't even entered Kosovo yet, but people are talking about it as the government's taking power. So it really is fresh. How was that as an experience for the country and also for the governing party?
Thank you for the invitation, Arun. It's a pleasure to speak with you guys again. Well, just to mention that in the first Kurti government, I wasn't a part of it, so I was looking at it as a citizen. And when the first cases started to appear in Kosovo, I felt a bit insecure. But when I saw the minister and the prime minister and the new government, I felt way more comfortable. And the situation that was going on after 2 and 3 cases in Kosovo, finally, because we were waiting for the new cases to show up, since everywhere in the world infections were happening. So after, I think, 2 months, we hear about a coup, and everybody gets frustrated and very, very scary, because the pandemic has been hitting us very hard, economically, psychologically, and in every aspect. So the coup was, in my opinion, very, except frustrating, but very nasty in a way. And that's why in the 14th of February 2021, we won again. So as a result,
I mean, but I think playing politics in a pandemic really, is sort of like you're saying, as a regular person trying to live your life, is super upsetting. But let's unpack for people who don't know much about what the coup was, and Trump's government. We should dig into that. I do think so. I mean, as these politics was happening, and I'll open it up to either of you who want to talk about it, though. Like, were cases under control? Was it spiraling? Like, what were some of the government measures that were in place versus the neighbor states, if you can remember?
I can explain the cases, but the political side, Arber, is the most informed.
Yeah. We can do a 1-2
Okay,
on that.
the cases in Kosovo in the beginning were a bit more in control, and right after the new cases were exposed in Kosovo, we faced lockdown and new measures.
Pretty aggressive
Pretty
measures.
aggressive, but the measures were very creative. We would go out for 90 minutes a day, and we weren't allowed to go anywhere else but to pharmacy or get some food or something like that. But the stress level was kind of balanced before the coup came and happened.
So, I mean, we're referring to a procedural coup, which is triggered by a vote of no confidence. Arbor, can you unpack sort of what led to that vote? Obviously, you do have a fragile coalition. It's only a one vote majority in parliament. What do people mean when they say coup?
Well, it happened. We started the government in 2020 after we managed to conclude an agreement with LDK. We started in March 25th of last year. And right away we had to deal with kind of an arm twist, if I can use this word, from the Trump representative in the Balkans, in
Richard
the
Grenell.
negotiations
Yeah.
between
Folks will be
Serbia and
familiar with
Kosovo,
him.
Richard Grenell. And we faced a lot of pressure, which was very unfair to us, because the logics of that pressure was okay, now you have to forget about your past, of all those things that I said, all those things that I mentioned, killed people, raped women, which are still living into hardship, houses burned, hundreds of thousands of properties destroyed. And you have to forget about this, which happened only 20 years ago, and you have to start making trade and commerce with a country that would still repeat it if it had the chance, with a country that does not want to recognize Kosovo. In 2007, the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, said that Kosovo is right to declare independence. So we even have international institutions recognizing Kosovo's right. In 2008, Kosovo declared independence. Today, Kosovo is recognized from more than 117 states of the UN, which are also the democratic states of the world, the more democratic states of the world, let's say. And still we got that pressure to start making trade with a country that is
And it seemed like it's
towards us
very
in our
ideologically, I think,
actuality, but
aligned
also
with
in our
the right wing of the U.S. Right, this was a sort of a free trade situation rather than the word I
Yeah,
believe the
but
prime
let's
minister kept
imagine
using was they wanted a reciprocal agreement, and this was the sticking point, right?
what would happen if we would force victims to start trading or making business with the perpetrators of violence in other circumstances. Because we know that recognizing victimhood is a process, is the start of a process to bring justice. But what if we force victims to say, okay, forget about the rape that happened, now you have to start business as usual with the rapist? This is something that even emotionally cannot be accepted. But of course, we couldn't accept it also because it would threaten our sovereignty as a country, our economy, and our welfare. We had Serbia, and we still have it, which uh, time after time raises these non-tariff barriers towards products and commerce coming from Kosovo. And we wanted to make some pressure on Serbia. We also wanted to raise the international awareness of what is going on so that they could see that this relation is not fair. We want to bring fairness into the Serbia-Kosovo relationship. We want to achieve recognition. This is also something that the actual president of the US, Joe Biden, said. He said that we should work for mutual recognition between Serbia and Kosovo. Of course, when we talk about US presidents, we are very much aware that presidents coming from the Republican Party, as well as presidents coming from the Democratic Party, have helped Kosovo. But this was not the case with the Grenell process and with the Trump presidency. They basically started working with a mentality which is very much Huntingtonian in a sense, but extremely Huntingtonian. So there is this history of Albanians being a majority Muslim country, and they started saying that Albanians are an Arab country. But this is a
Yeah, it was
mishmash
embarrassingly
history. This could not even be taken seriously. So we had this kind of things. We started to be worried about this, and then they started working with corrupt politicians from the old parties in Kosovo. So they at one moment achieved some kind of majority with the opposition by breaking the governing coalition with LDK, and then they, let's say, set up a coup. This is what happened. It was the middle of the pandemics, and we were working very well. We managed to have, in the beginning of May, 0 cases. I'm talking about 2020. It was hell everywhere in the Balkans and in Europe. We managed to have 0 cases, but still they didn't care about this. They just wanted us down. Still, what we had to do at that moment, we were facing a tough choice. If we would start a demonstration, then it would even more put the lives of the people in risk at the time of the pandemic. So we decided to wait and see what happens. We knew that there would be elections in America in autumn, and of course it was very clear for us which of the 2 candidates we should support. Also because of ideological, let's say, convictions, because we are a social democratic party. So we gave this message to the Albanian Americans. For patriotic reasons, they should support Joe Biden after what Trump did with Grenell in the year 2020 to Kosovo.
Yeah, no, and sort of even the most embarrassing kind of asterisk on this is the lake name for Trump that sort of happened as some sort of homage. But Orgesa, what can you tell me?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, really bad, right? Like
yeah,
even
that's
for
the thing.
everything else, that's like particularly just like, well. Um, what can you tell us about then what happened in terms of Corona policy and Corona results during the pandemic with the new LGK-led government, the Houthi-led government?
We started to demonstrate from our balconies with pots and pans. We put some flags naming that
Socially distanced,
we
yes,
won
very
new
good.
elections, and we do not want this new government that doesn't care about the citizens' public health. And as expected, this governance relaxed the measures, and the number of cases were rising day after day. The curfew was, shrinking from time to time, and but as as citizens, we would still be hoping if whether they are working on new contracts with companies producing vaccines, but that didn't happen either. So the only thing we ever experienced as citizens during those days of lockdown and the pandemic, without any restriction actually, is the fact that we took some sort of, how do we say, some taxes of 10% from the Ministry of Finance, and that was some sort
Yeah.
of like a reason that they're working, but in the other side we weren't feeling secure at all because we knew that the vaccines are not in their plan at all.
Let me ask you that. Why do you think the government was relaxing some of these restrictive measures? Is it sort of just a popularity play? Was there a segment of the population who was excited
Yes,
about
because
this?
during when they came in office, sorry, um, it was during summer, and diaspora was visiting as always Kosovo. So they would come from countries that were, developing the British new variant of COVID, and
Oh.
economically it would help Kosovo, but not in a health way, in our public health. So that's why they were relaxing the measures. But at the end of the day, even though we had a curfew from 10 to 5, these people weren't respecting it, and the inspectors weren't that strict with the orders. And apparently, everybody just went with their lives as if there was no pandemic because the government itself wouldn't give you that message.
And also maybe there was like tourism folks or hospitality folks probably were behind some pushing,
Yes, yes. So
as
they
we've
were
seen all
dealing all
across
the
Europe.
time
And
with them. So you would have clubs, open air clubs, but I mean, Kosovo is a tiny country in terms of comparing it with United States. So we know each other. We know which business is linked with LDK or AK or PDK. So we would see how their businesses would be more active because of the relaxed measures. So it wasn't safe at all, but yeah,
and cases did go
they
up.
did go up. For example, in November, if I can recall, we almost had 2,000 active cases, not active cases, new cases, because they differ, and 90 people lost their lives. So that's when we saw that we either have to save ourselves because your government doesn't really pay attention to that.
Arber, can I ask you a little bit about again, in the region, sort of Serbia has been playing a kind of very high-level game of vaccine diplomacy, right? They got some early from China and from Russia, and we saw people in the region even traveling to Serbia as kind of exercising soft power. Can you talk a little bit about that for the viewers, and also how Kosovo did or did not play into some of that because of the backdrop you've already given us?
Serbia started early vaccination in December. It was one of the first countries in the Balkans. It was the first country, but it was also one of the first countries in Europe to start vaccination. Of course, vaccination is good, and everybody wants this, and we promote vaccination a lot. But the thing is that the previous government, the LDK government, as Orgesa might already have mentioned it, they didn't really have a plan on anything, but not even on vaccination or regarding the pandemics. So they didn't even start negotiations for a contract. We didn't find any contract already done from the previous government or any negotiation in process. So we started from the very beginning when we took the government in February. So Kosovo was a bit lagged behind. Also, we have to keep in mind that Kosovo decided to apply and stick to the regulations of the European health authorities, and to not import vaccines which were not recognized by EU health authorities, even though we are not part of the EU, but we want to be part of the EU. So we want to follow those standards. So we decided not to accept vaccines coming from China or Russia, because at the time they were not licensed and accepted from the European institutions. Serbia did that, and it managed to have a very high vaccination percentage. But then apparently there were some vacillations with the vaccination. The Sinovac, it didn't come up as very efficient. Even Chinese authorities accepted that it was not very efficient. So even in Serbia, we had, unfortunately for that people there, we had a surge on cases, even though they were pretty much a big percentage was vaccinated. When it comes to Kosovo, we worked a lot, and now we have contracts with Pfizer and AstraZeneca. We also were helped from many partner countries in Europe, but also from America. And now we started mass vaccination, and we aim to have more than 60% of the population vaccinated within this year. For the moment, right now, we are having a good result in this process. When it comes to diplomacy, we decided not to put into a jeopardy, let's say the geopolitical project to which Kosovo belongs to, which is that of the Western democracies. We have right now in the Balkans some initiatives to bring here Putin's Eurasian project, Euro-Asia, as they call it, Eurasia project. We don't accept that because we believe it threatens us, not only in a strict matter of state sense or geopolitical sense, but also it threatens our lives as human beings. We had previous experience of that kind of policy coming from Moscow or from Belgrade, which is echoing their, let's say, expansive colonialist projects from the 20th century. So we are not talking here about history which is very far in the past, but it's the 20th century. And we don't want that repeated. So we didn't want to jeopardize our geopolitical project. We want to be attached to the Western European countries, and to NATO and to the
Well,
US.
so
This
some of
is
these
vital for
ambitious
us.
goals that Arber mentioned, Orgesa, how now you're no longer an observer, you are in the government. So I can even ask you in your official capacity, how are you doing with those goals, and what what did you inherit coming into this position, and what are the main obstacles? All of those things at once. I'll remind you of any of them that you forget.
Okay.
Don't worry.
I'll start with the inheritance because that's the most important part that we have to mention. So when we came in the office, we basically found only a USB and a few documents, as if we were changing not governments but something less.
Apartments.
Apartments,
Yeah.
exactly. And we saw that even by that time, when the whole world was creating commissions to create vaccination plan and all these conditions with the vaccination with the vaccine producers, the LDK government didn't do anything up until the last part of the sorry, December. In the last week of December, they created the commission, who was a part of some professionals, and they created this vaccination plan, which is more or less copy paste and anything. So nothing happened, to be honest. And when we came in office, we had to do everything from scratch. The commission of the vaccination, the plan, and how do we get the Pfizer contract signed. But as we were continuing to work and doing a great job, because we finally signed the contract with 1.2 million vaccines in May. Some journalists leaked a document which basically almost failed our contract with Pfizer company. As a result, we had a conference, and the minister called out the police, sorry, to interview how did these journalists get to this very, very fragile document. And so the opposition would always use this case to attack our minister as if he doesn't want to sign the contract. And in my opinion, as a part of this government, but at the same time as an observer, because you still live here and you want to see new things and good things happening to public health, I honestly still do not understand how irrational they are being as an opposition, because they're still attacking our minister as if he didn't want to sign a contract that would first of all gain us more votes, and of course that would be something better for us, and second, it would put our lives in danger if something else would have been leaked from that contract. So after that scandal, we signed the contract. Everybody's happy, and on 15th of June, we started mass vaccination, and we're planning to vaccinate 20,000 people all around Kosovo, our country. And the procedure is going okay. It can be even better, because we're facing now with misinformation. And
This is what I
yeah.
wanted to ask you about. Yeah, like, set that up
Okay.
for us.
So as in everywhere in the world, misinformation are present in Kosovo as well. It's quite a challenge for every leader of in the world to deal with this. So that's why our government is not talking only about vaccines by the minister's side, but also our prime minister is talking about vaccines all the time, and the president, since we have to get vaccinated, since Delta is coming, and we're expecting in September that the cases might rise as well, because it's happening everywhere in the world, and we want to prevent that from happening. So it's not only a promise from our government, but it's also a promise to public health, and we need to stick to that plan, and we're doing fine. But yet again, the misinformation is expanding like Delta. But at the same time, the religious leaders are very cooperative with us, and also private businesses are promoting that
So civic society is being the
society.
real kind
Yes,
of,
yes.
yeah. Our last question goes to Arber. Can you put this sort of misinformation in an even more context? I mean, what do you see politically happening? Who are the actors? Are there people deliberately stoking some of this, and who are they? Or is it more just a general churn that is the internet? Because you do have a very young, very online population in Kosovo. I think people should understand.
Yeah, it's true. There is also something global going on. We see people very angry after 4 decades of neoliberalism or the dominance of finance capitalism. So we should also understand, let's say, the pain that workers who are now unemployed are going through, because they are unemployed because the factory closed and they relocated to, I don't know, another country where they can exploit workers with a cheaper wage. We should understand this process. But some people, some politicians are working to make us believe that there are only two alternatives. One is neoliberalism, finance capitalism, the moving of the capital without restrictions and responsibilities and so on. And the other one is ultra conservative Putin style authoritarianism. Some kind of mix actually between Putin and Berlusconi. You know, kind of a Stalin clown or something like this. And we shouldn't accept this binary alternative. No, we should find what's our interest and where we should move forward to. And I believe that we should understand that the people struggle for better healthcare, for better education in our country, for more work alternatives there, for fair trade, for capitalism which is also responsible of the climate, of the society and so on. We should start from these people's struggles and wishes when we build our policies. What's going on right now in the Balkans? We have the Serbian president in Western Balkans. I'm confined to these 6 Western Balkan countries which are still not part of the EU. The strongest of these 6 Western Balkan countries by far is Serbia. And we have the Serbian president, which was a minister of the government of Slobodan Milosevic in '99, the genocidal Slobodan Milosevic, which was the perpetrator of crimes in Bosnia, in Croatia, and elsewhere, but also here in Kosovo, terrible crimes. And Vucic was his minister of information, of media, if I can put it so, of communication. He was a minister in the government. Now we have Vucic, which basically managed to erase, to swipe off all of his opposition, and now he controls with more than 80% the parliament of Serbia with his allies. And we have this initiative because Vucic does not accept any possibility for Serbia to join the NATO, so he's not even thinking about transatlantic or North Atlantic security and integration. But he wants Serbia to be a partner of Russia and of the Eurasian project of Putin. And Vucic works in the Balkans closely with Edi Rama, which is another authoritarian politician of Albania, Prime Minister of Albania, which managed to govern without any opposition in the local government, but also in the central government for more than 3 years. And time after time he organizes elections which are full of problems, but he manages to keep the power also because of the opposition parties in Albania suffer from chronic corruption. So now we have Vučić and the Rama working together to threaten the EU to accept Serbia and Albania, because of course they don't want to work to raise the standards of the judiciary or of the economy, of the welfare of their people, but they want to gain EU integration by threats. So they work together to threaten the EU, but they also threaten other countries like Kosovo or Bosnia or Montenegro, which are right to be afraid of this initiative. We have a lot of so-called new media. They use a lot of social networking platforms, and they build the so-called portals in the internet, which feed the population with fake news, with scandalous titles and so on. And their aim, their effect, actually, is to numb the people's sensitivities, because it's the only way for them to get a pass through all that corruption that is around them. So, in order for them not to have any reaction from the society, they build this numbness. They use it to build a numbness, this kind of communication with a lot of fake news, a lot of scandal, a lot of stories which would sound incredible, trashy, and cheesy in the same way and the same moment. So, but they do this a lot. There are like tons of titles and stories per day coming out of this kind of media, and I think that the progressivist politics would also start a discussion about how media and the new platforms should be regulated, because it's a little bit like a Far West, and the biggest victim in this case is the unprotected and unorganized private member of the public, the citizen. So we should start discussing about this. Of course, I am anti-censorship and I am for democracy in communication. But here we are not talking about freedom of speech for the individual. We are talking about freedom of speech for those who can allow luxurious expenditure in buying these ads and using these mechanisms to build any kind of...
That's a really good point, and I think a lot of it is the fact that we are giving a company or a few companies the kind of right to say what is true and what isn't true. We need regulation even to sort of begin to take this control back, let alone make sure those platforms aren't used for nefarious purposes. And I also agree that one of the most effective things is just throwing so much information someplace. It's someone calls it the narcotic function of information. Like when you just get so much information and you shut down. They do this in Texas. You have 1 million elections. But thank you so much for taking us through so much of this, Arber and Orgesa. We appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can catch up soon.
La imagen por la cual vale la pena arriesgar la vida, sacrificarse hasta la muerte en los campos de batalla de todos los continentes del mundo.